And tonight, some real intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa as we go live with the Sensefear channel.
Oh, another good one. Seems like every week now. You'd think I was a little fibberushki. So let's get this set up right. Yes, of course. So since we are on the weekend of the 61st birthday of Doctor Who, take stock. Well, that's the plan anyway. But you know what Robbie Burns once said about the best laid plans of mice and men often going awry? We had planned to take a fair, more objective view of the three specials from November and December 2023 and see if we can properly take a stock check and give a thorough reappraisal of RTD's, Disney's and BBC's intentions and their execution and whether the risks taken were worthwhile. And of course, the War Games in colour, edited down to 90 minutes, was announced only yesterday. You know the Sensefear prefer not to be too triggered into emergency reactive streams. We prefer to think about it, give you a more reflective, considered response, and so we don't just have a panel to offer their views. We have Malcolm Hulke's biographer, Michael Herbert here, who can offer his insight and context on the War Games itself and on how he feels about amending, editing, colorising Malcolm's work. We also have a sprinkling of views to settle down for good old, what should we call it? A Sensefear Sunday supper, and a sprinkling of a like and subscription would be lovely too. Thank you very much. So we're ready. There you go. The advert's there. That's the thumbnail. Reappraising or vandalising Doctor Who. War Games is obviously in reference there, but also the three specials last year did an awful lot to Doctor Who. And with that year's gap, it might be interesting now to really just take a look at what we think was worth the risk and wasn't. So I mentioned the Malcolm Hulke biographer, and of course, we've had him on many times before. Good to see you, Michael.
Oh, thanks, Brendan. Thanks for inviting me back.
It's quite key to have you on. I mean, I don't know how many streams will be saying they've got Malcolm Hulke's biographer to talk about War Games. It's no good as all saying, oh, God, we can't stand this, we can't stand that. Let's just talk about War Games too and what the risk is of doing various things to it. So, and of course, you've got insight into Malcolm Hulke's life and history. And of course, I'm sure you can give us a whole lot of tidbits about stuff like that as well as we go.
I'll do my best.
Of course. There you go. I've set the mission.
Should you choose to accept it? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, so, thanks for coming on, because that's be really useful, because, you know, we can all talk about the War Games, but War Games with reference to all this is great. So, and he hasn't been on for a little while, but our classic Who fan here. Hi, Jeremy.
Got me at it again.
He's at it again. He's swatting.
Andy Hawk, comrade.
Well, are you the war chief tonight, or are you going to be a warlord, or are you going to be?
I don't know. I think there'll be plenty of games tonight. There'll be plenty of games tonight.
Yes. Well, that's why I had it on that thumbnail. Cry havoc. Let's slip the dogs of war. Because I thought, is this RTD provoking us, or is this just really a nice Christmas gift? The War Games then. Be interesting to see what the thread thinks. And he's just slipped into my time stream, so to speak. Hello, Michael.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm very good. I think I just got in the house just as you got in the house. But
no, I was running late. Sorry, mate. I'm glad I made it, but I was thinking, you know, when you sort of like you got traffic and he's like, "Come out of the way, get out of the way," and I'm here. So there we go.
No,
nice to be back.
Well, we're assembling a good panel, and we want everybody's thoughts on the war games and the specials from last year. But I'm not finished, and I have to say, the sense for you. We don't like to be predictable, and we also don't like to all agree with each other because we're bigger than that. So I've got a new panelist on who you might have seen in the thread. Everybody, Simon Anthony, and he's a Doctor Who fan. He's worked in the industry. And he tends to have a contrary view to what I'm saying and what some of the thread is saying. So I said to him, he should come on as the Contrarian. So we're going to introduce him now. There you go. That's a good intro.
It was lovely. Thank you very much.
So he's got a terrible mission tonight to disagree with us all night. No, but
The big Doctor No.
Yes, I know. But this is the point. We want to look at every angle of the discussion, and I think it's important to do that because I do try and promise that with the sense for you. And having had a day to think about it, I think helps than rushing into a stream and stuff like that. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, just to kind of warm up the panel and warm up everybody in the thread, is, you're all Doctor Who fans and you've all got skin in the game and you've all got different views. So basically, in the last week, has there been anything that has particularly cheered you in Doctor Who or depressed you in Doctor Who? And we have the item called the ups and downs of the Time Rota week. Here we go. There you go. I've gone for my effects, my big effects. So I'll go around.
Intros. They're great. I love them. Really good.
So, Michael, if I asked you any good news or bad news this week in Doctor Who that you found worthwhile?
I tend not to be sort of hooked into the sort of day by day, minute by minute news about the show or whatever. But in terms of Doctor Who, this week I've been part of my work on the book, the biography of Malcolm Hulke. I've been going through his episodes and clipping out, doing some stills, so clipping stills from it, which is harder work than you think. Trying to get people to be in the right position so they could take an interesting. I got some quite nice pictures from it, which hopefully we can use.
Yes,
the BBC agree. So it kind of revisited.
And I've been very lucky because you've been sending them to me. I mean, I've been very appreciative. You've been sending these stills to me. It's been great.
It's probably made you completely shut down your email system now. But so I looked at the Ambassador of Death, Colony of Space, Frontier of Space, the Solarians, and Me 17 Devils. So I just need to do dinosaurs, I think, and that'll be about it. So that's been interesting to sort of revisit them quite quickly in colour.
Yeah.
Which will be something we'll be discussing later, obviously. That's about it. And Andrew, Richard Bates, who worked with Malcolm Hulke in the early 60s on the original series of the Avengers. So he was working there in the on the Blackman period very intensely, to the point of I can't believe how much work, what the sort of doing 26 episodes a year on a 2-week turnover would be like for everyone involved. But he sent me a draft of his autobiography, which is very interesting. So after the Avengers, he worked on lots of TV, some of which you've heard of, like Darling Buds of May, Chucky, the Tripods.
Chucky. Oh, I love the Tripods.
And what's the last thing he worked on? Oh, yeah, did quite a lot of work with David Jason, on Darling Buds of May, obviously, but also Touch of Frost. He was very involved in that. So
okay,
he's now 87.
So you can say I'm fiddling with this in a very strange way. So thank you for that. So there's you can see he's kind of in the reeds of Doctor Who, so to speak, and TV more generally. Jeremy, I don't know what you're going to say. A good or bad news element of the Doctor Who week for you?
The interview with the Cootie in was it Vanity Fair?
Oh, I know. I'm saving my saloon. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm ready.
And then, of course, they released a Casio watch with Nakuti on the front of the box and with a Doctor Who TARDIS pin, which I didn't I thought was very naff, but I suppose that's it's one of those TV tie cash-ins, isn't it? Which is not very good, really.
Yeah.
So that's probably my downer.
Well, we've been going on for ages now saying in Forbidden Planet and various places you can see Doctor Who merchandise is disappearing. So, of course, in many ways you want to see some, like the B&M, that's one of my good ones, I suppose. More Daleks, I'm always happy with that.
Yeah.
But, you can get a lot of tat as well.
Yeah, the B&M figures are very good. The character option ones.
Yeah. Claude, Michael again, any thoughts on ups and downs this week?
Two things. First of all, we had the first trailer for the Christmas special coming up, which involved a dinosaur or something. It looked a bit underwhelming, but I never get excited about New Who. I know with obviously a lot of people here are more involved with the classic Who, which is fine because I like both as well. But I was a bit underwhelmed by that. I'm interested with the obviously the War Games special, which is going to be coming in a month's time as well. Yep. Much more interested in that. I know you're going to be talking about that. So ups and downs, really. Obviously, I don't know how they're going to do the. It's going to be heavily edited down from was it a 10-part story, the original War Games?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of hacking down.
Yeah, and you're triggering our thread now. I mean, calm down, thread. Don't worry. We really are going to go for the War Game.
Yes.
All the detail. I was just trying to try and get a bit. I'm going to do this now. I mean, it's the Michael Ball. He's started us off. It's an alert already. You've made us go toxic. Here you go. You've toxified the debate already.
What can I say? You're never going to have me back again now, are you?
No, but I had a segment ready for you. There you go.
Very professional. Very, very professional.
So, Simon, welcome to the Sense Sphere. And
hello. Yes.
Well, before you get
before I what?
Before you get contrary to us, up or down in the Doctor Who week for you?
Well, the upness, I think, is contrary to what everybody else has been saying. I had a particularly Doctor Who pleasant week. It started out with seeing Ian Levine's wonderful recreation of Faceless Ones, which I really splendid. And most of his stuff I have found to be just unbelievably good. Bear in mind what it is. Now, it's from little photographs taken of the telly screen, so you can't expect much. But somehow or another, you're managing to get it. It's quite extraordinary, and it keeps improving. He goes back and redoes stuff. So I'm most impressed with that, and I paid in my dues as a thank you for allowing me access to his stuff. He's not selling it. He's asking people to pay for access, which I'm very happy to do. Indeed, have done twice. So that was one very big up. Then last night, Brendan said, "Oh, it's Doctor Who. It's what's it called? The second one in colour. That fella." Well, I did. Yeah. I have long COVID. It wrecks my brain. My memory has never been particularly good, but it's rather rubbish now. So that's my excuse for getting all the names wrong, which I did before then anyway. So it wasn't much of a.
I'll have to come up with a different name for you, not Contrarian, but right, okay. I've
got to keep going on this bit, and that is, you said it's in colour, and I did a search, and I found it. All 10 episodes in colour on the internet archive.
Yeah.
And I was most depressed. Oh, the black and white quality, if I turn the colour off, was much worse than the black and white quality of the iPlayer version. And as a bloke who actually put the colour back on Pertwee Who's first in the 1980s, I know how difficult it is. So I swallowed that back and started watching all 10 episodes. Episodes 2 to 10 were far better, the technical quality. And I absolutely loved it. It was terrific. I mean, the storyline was cracking. The acting was great. Oh, dear me.
Well,
So
well,
that's a big up
well,
as well.
Well, we'll definitely get into that, and yes, I mean this is what's going to be interesting when we get into the War Games one, which is you can watch it. Yeah, you can watch it in color if you want on the Internet Archive, as Simon said.
Don't bother.
But of course, there's another version that's coming out on December the 23rd. And by God, thank you to the thread for being there for us. But I do want to kind of just get people in now, and then we'll go through one or two more uppers and downers. So great to see so many people. Sticksboy 73, hello. Obviously, I've put Rachael on. Chat about it, don't shout about it. She's stuck in traffic. She was booked. Farsight, hello to us all. Michael Q, SG, Paddy's Miniatures again. We were all talking last night, weren't we? David Harding's here. Lee Smith's here. So I feel as though I'm a teacher turning into a register. I apologize for that. But when you look at actually some of the, and hello, Garbage, good to see you. Then we get some of the comments. And of course, it gets a bit tasty now. And yes, even though we'll do the War Games in a moment, we can start off where the thread is. David Harding, the War Games is 10 episodes long. How much do they strip out in order to get it down to 90? And we will discuss, David, don't you worry, the ramifications of that and whether it's ever acceptable and what's the intention. I mean, for example, I'll just ask the question rhetorically now. Why can't the BBC just show it in its entirety? What is the idea of editing anything anymore? Anyway, we park that, but it's definitely going to be discussed, David.
Length of time they've got on the broadcast slot. That is the main reason.
Except that, yeah, there might be some others as well. But, you know, they could have picked, I mean, as a lot of fans have said, they could have picked Tomb of the Cyberman. If they want to do a Patrick Troughton, they could have done it that way, and that's a 4-parter. So they took stuff out and added in new stuff. I think that Blu-ray will be a hard pass for me, says David there. I don't think it should have been done. It's disrespectful to the production team. Now, this is what I'm interested in when we really get into this, because I've said this in a few of my streams. SG, apparently there's supposed to be unseen footage. Yes, they say there's new footage. So they're editing a lot out that was in it, decided by the producer to put in, and they've now added other stuff that they've either just found. They've also added a regeneration. Don't you worry with discussing that as well. There's a lot of things to discuss. It's not as easy as just saying whether it's in colour or not. So yes. So I'm just going to see if I've got any other tasty stuff before we really get going. I'm just helping out here. I mean, Rachael herself, who, as you know, on her channel has just reviewed the blooming War Games. 10 episodes is too long to the War Games anyway, but 90 minutes may be too short. And this is what I mean. It's the Goldilocks syndrome.
Yeah.
I skipped the opening and closing titles and watched the whole lot in one lump and did not think it was too long, which surprised me.
I've watched it in all 10 episodes in one sitting as well.
Yeah, what are the? Is this the infantilization of the viewing public? You know, that we can't cope with stuff like this anyway. Garbage. Don't mind other people having another opinion to my own, as long as they aren't rude and call names and tell me I am wrong. Of course, and you know, on the Sensphere, it's not going to happen. We will all get along. Paddy's Miniatures wants to book Simon to do a target book and read it to him.
I'd be very happy. So, seriously, I would. I do voiceovers and read books, and I can now plug my wonderful podcast Torty Talks, in which I read the entirety of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
There you go.
Nice.
There you go. And it's lovely to see. I mean, there's so many pals on tonight. Peter Harrington, Bobby D, and all that. JWC Reviews, they chose the War Games purely for the regeneration scene. And JWC, we will get there because, yes, they could have picked other Patrick Troughton stories that are in their entirety and are shorter and therefore easier to do and cheaper to do. Yeah, there's a load to talk about. I'll just take David Mullen's comment and then we'll move on, and then a bit of discussion, and then we'll get to War Games. Those shows were made for 425 line black and white. Why they're often so atmospheric and tense. Remake them in color, and I feel you get in the way. Yeah.
I
can see that.
It's 405 lines. 405 lines and
Yeah.
625.
High definition.
Yeah.
405 was high definition, I'll have you know. Oh, yes.
It was in
Very
the 1960s.
No, it was not. I used to work in videotape, and I've played back 405 tapes from the original Quad Masters, and they are absolutely cracking. The problem is, if you record them on a piece of film with every alternate line dropped, you drop the resolution by 50%. And then if you make a copy of the film, it drops even further. No, quite seriously, 405 line broadcast television was high definition, as it was said. And I'm delighted to be able to tell the world that that is the truth.
Right.
So
Well, there you see. So we've got a fair, you see, we've got some interesting stuff here. So my ups and downs of the week, I'm trying to reflect the thread or where people are thinking. So I'll rattle through some and just get you, if you want to say something, you can, and then we'll rattle through. I love this. You know, people do all these amazing videos. Michael Ball, for example. Have you seen this one with Keir Starmer coming in as Davros?
I love it. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I saw that screenshot. And I thought that's hilarious. That's really funny.
I mean, it just plays into where everybody feels they are at the moment. I think with any politician politicians now, whatever their colour, seem to tell us what to do much more than they did in the past when they felt as though they wanted our vote.
Yeah, it's so strange.
So I thought that was, I don't know, it was a cheerful one of the week. Well, this is supposed to cheer people, of course. Joy to the World, Stephen Moffat's Christmas Spectacular. We've got a few more publicity shots. And then the other little thing that we got the synopsis. And it's that tiny, tiny, tiny synopsis there. When Joy checks into a London hotel in 2024, she opens a secret doorway to the Time Hotel, discovering danger, dinosaurs, and the Doctor. But a deadly plan is unfolding across the earth just in time for Christmas. And as you said, Michael, I'm a Doctor Who fan, but I find it's not getting to my heart.
I don't get that buzz of excitement anymore. I just don't. I just look at it and think, what is this going to be to disappoint me? Isn't that horrible to think that? I never used to think that. And I just think, oh, here we go. What's it going to be? What's going to be the messaging? What's going to be the... I don't want to feel like this.
Michael, before I move on to the others, Michael, why do you think you're in that position like me? Why are we feeling like this?
Just because of what I've seen, especially over the last year. Over the last few years, it's just deteriorated. And I just
be negative, folks.
No, I wish I didn't. I honestly, I try to be open-minded, but I just feel that with what we've had to digest over the last year, I just think, well,
it's like
where can it go now? You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm going to be contrarian in this, I can assure you.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't worry. And we'll bring you in. But Jeremy, I can see you nodding away there regarding what Michael's saying and slightly what I'm thinking. This is what I'm trying to understand. We are all passionate Doctor Who fans. We've invested in this show. We know it inside out. We've read the books. We've watched the whole lot. But we're not engaged to this. No. Why? Now, in my case, I'm thinking, Jeremy, I feel just heavily cynical now because of what I've seen.
Yeah, it's because of the last 5 years of the show and the way it's been going. And you just don't have your hopes up too high for this one. And as I say, I won't be watching it. And I just listen to all the reviews.
How do you do that, Jeremy? Because we had our great stream when, you said you were giving up. But how do you manage that? I haven't got to that point where I avoid the Doctor Who show knowing it's on. I can't do that.
Well, I find it pulls a bit on the classic series because when I want to watch the classic series, I keep thinking about Gatwa and then Jodie Whittaker, and then it's like a magnet. It draws me away from it. So I'm losing more and more interest.
Yeah.
So I really don't want to carry on watching this new reiteration because it's having an effect on my viewpoint on the classic series. And I want to keep that memory solid and to keep it going. And when I do watch the old classic series, my interest starts to generate up a bit. And the same with these, these live streams, these podcasts. I find that the podcasts and live streams are now more interesting than the bloody show that itself. And when that happens, that tells you all you need to know about the way the show is going at this moment in time.
Yeah. Now, Michael Herbert, where do you stand? Before I come to the Contrarian, where do you stand on? Is this going to be your TV schedule on Christmas Day?
No, I've kind of decided that it's no longer for me, really. That they've kind of moved it in a direction that I feel much sympathy or identification with. So it just feels like a travesty of the original show. So I'm quite happy to watch the old stuff, and I don't feel I don't know. I suppose I don't feel identification with it anymore, really. But that's okay. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
move on from things, don't you? And it's enjoyable to come on and talk about the classic series. So and I wish there is plenty, and wish they'd animate a few more. I'm still waiting for the Daleks master plan to come back.
Yeah. Well, as Garbage says here, when I think of the Voyage of the Damned, absolute pinnacle Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I think it still got the highest ratings, didn't it, Jeremy? I think
I think it was like 14 million or something.
Yeah.
I remember
It was
that.
very, very good. It was very good, well produced, and exciting to watch. Exciting to watch, and that's the key. But this new reiteration is like, okay, you know,
it's like okay. That's
Yeah.
how you review it, isn't it?
And I suppose Garbage is, and I'm going to then come to Simon, but then I think of Chibnall's Timeless Children, Davos Gate, Touching Grass, Sue's Kempner, and all that stuff. And I think that's why we end up where we are. So, Mr. Contrarian Simon, have we all got it wrong?
Frankly, in buckets of wrong. Yes, astonishingly huge quantities of know your wrongness. It's just, although when I started watching Shooty, I thought just the same as everybody else, this is not working, because it was such a culture shock. But it was just that. It was a culture shock. It didn't mean the program was bad. It just meant that I had yet to learn how to watch it. And so I watched it again and again. And every time I watch it, the bits I know are going to worry me, I can tune out. And then I can see the other bits that there are a huge number of that are extremely good. All this bit about the social impact of stuff and all that, that's always been in Doctor Who. It's always been there. I mean, in the war games, it's there in buckets. The whole concept of the war games is signaling things. I mean, oh gosh.
But don't you think the war games, and I was going to bring in Michael Herbert there for a second if you want, but you know, the war games it references different times in our warlike history, but it doesn't give us a lecture. The only analogy I suppose you get is that you've got, just like Wilfred Owen and Sassoon were talking about the generals and those in charge treating people like cannon fodder.
Yeah.
You know, we all know our World War I poetry, don't we, from school? Then that, in a way, the war chiefs and everybody was playing that role, and so you had a kind of satire there, I suppose, Michael Herbert.
Yes, but I think it wasn't it's not preaching. I mean, they didn't. Terence and Mac didn't do kind of agitprop. They weren't Joe Littlewood, for instance. But if you watch a show like "Oh, What a Lovely War," I think that was much more directly preaching. I think in a way.
How do you define preaching?
But in terms of the war game itself, I think it's much more subtle and also a cleverly constructed and intricate plot as well. So
sorry, Michael, as we're saying here, and I heard Simon's question, and the thread are suitably just questioning. So what's our answer? Claude or Jeremy, what's our answer to this? I find it is a bit preachy. How can we define preachy as opposed to where Michael Herbert's just said it was more intertwined in the plot before? How can we do that? So Simon knows where we're coming from.
I personally think that in Classic Who, you'd have these ideas, but they're more subtle. It seems to be now that when you have these ideas, it's much more in your face, and it's much more kind of... I don't know, it just stands out in a way which is more of a message rather than just a natural part of the story. I know it's hard to define it, but I just see it. I mean, I know that I can understand that obviously TV changes. It naturally evolves. That's part of, that's going to be a natural factor. But going back to what we were saying about New Who, it's only until the last few years that I'm just starting to feel cynical, and I actually like New Who. So it's not. I'm not just. I love classic and New Who. You know, a lot of people. There's some people who just can't stand New Who. In period, they just like the classic. But I just don't like some of the ways that it's done in 2024 compared to even 2008 to 2009. It's just something's different. But it's hard to define it in that way.
I mean, Jeremy, where do you stand on this? You know, come on, we're dyed in the wool. We like the early 70s Doctor Who. We know that Colony in Space, Curse of Peladon, Green Death. We know. Everybody knows. Every Doctor Who fan knows there's a bit of politics in there. But I didn't think it was preaching in the way that you get a dot and bubble splurt at the end. That you get these kind of moments. Remember some of the Chris Chibnall ones, let's be frank, when at the end you were in the TARDIS and he suddenly shows you Rosa Parks getting a medal and saying, this is how we... Oh, God. Basically, the narrative is short, the plot ends, and we suddenly get a little lecture and a PowerPoint. I felt like I was a teacher again. So, Jeremy, am I on the same page as you?
Well, you're on the same page as me, yeah. I mean, obviously, when I watched the things like the Green Death, a lot of it went over my head because I was a lot younger age, but I was still very much aware of the environmental issue at that time. But in this new reiteration of Doctor Who, the message is banged out week after week after week after week, and you think they've already mentioned that about this character was LGBTQ. They've already mentioned about their anti-Trump, etc., and it's like, you know, you need to just.
Trump's ever been mentioned, has he?
Well, I mean, that one with the spiders was very much sort of.
Oh, he was a parallel Trump, wasn't he? Yes.
Yeah, very much so. And it's like, here we go again. Is in another episode. If they just played it straight and just produced a straight science fiction story without any messaging at all, which I know that they can't. They couldn't possibly do that. Because this is the BBC and Russell T Davies, and so we must get this message out to the kids. We must get this message out to the audience about, you know, anti-Brexit, anti-Trump, this and that, etc., etc. This is not a political show, and it's, you know, it's not a lifestyle show. This is actually a science fiction fantasy television program. Yeah. Entertainment, pure entertainment. If I want to know about all these other issues, I go and watch the BBC News or Sky.
And we understand the irony, don't we? That science fiction is normally very political in the way that but it does it in an analogy. It takes a political issue, it planks it on a different planet or in a different era to take away the pressure from the writer. Because some of these writers were taking a risk that if they challenged the government right in front of them, they'd be arrested or put away. So basically, you know, science fiction
you're talking about.
Sorry?
McCarthyism, effectively.
Stuff like that, yeah. I mean, you know, so...
Well, if you think a writer like John Brunner in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, he kind of took things going on around him in society and projected it. So what would overpopulation be like in 15 years' time? What would an environmental crisis be like in 20 years' time? How would technology, like in the Shockwave Rider, it's sort of very accurately predicted society that's almost like our own, actually, where everyone's online and you could be removed from existence at the behest of the authorities. So those are the kind of science fiction ideas. I was just going to say, adding a bit, just thinking about Malcolm Hulke and the kind of broad moral things advanced in Doctor Who were in line with society at the time. So most people thought that racism was wrong. Most people thought the war was wrong, and the World War I had been very much reevaluated in the 1960s through shows like looking back at there was a long series in the early 60s about the First World War. What's it called? The Great War, where they interviewed survivors. So there was nothing. It was not saying anything particularly different in the war games or any others of the environmental crisis. I think what we are new Who, the kind of Starmer Who, perhaps what we got now. They're kind of taking very controversial. So by no means all society thinks that non-binary is a real thing.
Yeah,
or that men can become women. So those are very controversial, I think, and by no and bitterly resented by lots of women I know.
Well, and there's going to be reference to it when we look at the Star Beast, the Giggle, and Wild Blue Yonder as a package a bit later. And I know the thread are down for us to get to the war games, so I'll just make sure I do a few more items on ups and downs of Doctor Who. We've had some sad anniversaries in the last few days. I mean, yes, I'll come to the happy one, but basically Verity Lambert, the anniversary of her death. Can you just look, lads, for a second at some of the programs she was responsible for, not only just starting Doctor Who, Budgie, Minder, Jonathan Creek, Rumpole of the Bailey, Hazel. I mean,
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
And I'll put it just bigger for a second, because honestly, there's our great Verity Lambert. I have no challenge or question of her work.
So did she do a Clockwise with John Cleese? I didn't know she did that. That's a really funny film. I love that film.
Well, as you know, she was a woman ahead of her time. She started her own production company. She was a good, strong woman, and let's face it, she had the balls, didn't she, to take on Sidney Newman and say the Daleks stay in. And you know how the world would have been different.
They didn't have a bug eye. I think that's how she got away with it.
Yeah, and maybe needs must and all the rest of it, but you know, it's a sad anniversary. It always is, whether it's family members or anything. But Verity Lambert started this all off, and while everybody's going on about Doctor Who Day and how many years since it began, she did it. She was the one.
Lots of those shows are still being shown, aren't they? Rumpole, until mostly on Talking Pictures. I wish they'd show Rock Follies again, though. It's a really good series.
Yeah. There's good ones there. I mean, you can take your pick, but I'm sure everybody, and you know, there's a lot of love for Verity Lambert. I wish, it's a bit like William Hartnell. I wish William Hartnell was around to see what's happened. Well, okay, to see that Doctor Who's successful. I'll just put it that way. But I'd love to, because it would have been amazing for the man who was the first Doctor to see this.
I think it was very. I think it's been very. The first Doctor has been very unjustly characterised in New Who, isn't he? I think.
Oh yeah. I think if William Hartnell was, I think this is when we get to the War Games discussion. If Terence Dicks and Malcolm Hulke were still around, I'd be very intrigued whether this editing or butchering would be going on. But anyway, we've got to get to it first. So, as you know, Michael, I might as well give you a shoe in. I mean, it was Malcolm Hulke, the anniversary of his sad passing on the 21st of November, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, he died very young. He was only, 59, so died of cancer. Very, it's sad that he went so young. And also, it's kind of interesting reading some of the interviews with him he did in his last years with young, eager teenage Doctor Who fans who he was very kind to them and let them go around and talk to him. But it was quite clear when you read the interviews that for him, Doctor Who was a long time ago. And like most writers, you do something and then you move on. So sometimes he was struggling to remember the details of some of the plots because he hadn't thought about it for 5 years. I mean, he kind of revisits them for his book, but then I think, like as a good writer, when he revisited the plots for the Target books, he kind of thought, I could do better than that, which might be an interesting thing to talk about in terms of this colourised version. There, he did change and play around with the plots of his shows when it came to writing them again for Target. He kind of
I've got the one yes, SG quite rightly. As I put these things together, sometimes I'm saying it was his sad passing. It was that was in July, but of course his birth was the 21st of November.
Yeah,
it's one or the other, isn't it, with me? But I certainly don't want to ignore his presence in Doctor Who, and that's the most important thing. One last thing before we just tiptoe into let me guess, the War Games. This will trigger you.
no.
Suze Kempner, happy birthday, Doctor Who. It was certainly something to be a part of the anniversary last year. Right, who wants to nibble at that?
Pardon my ignorance, but who is Suze Kempner?
Exactly.
Who is she? I don't know who she is, seriously.
Well, Michael, let me just educate you. She thinks she was something in the Doctor Who anniversary.
What?
Jeremy, can you help us out here? I'm in denial.
I think she's an actor,
Right.
and
She
An
thinks she's
actor or an essay?
and she was in this Doctor Who spin-off thingy that disappeared as quickly as it came.
Yeah, she was like some assassin was it in the magazine or something? Oh,
I never really watched it. I never really took any interest in it because I knew it would flop, and it did.
And as Lee Smith says, she was Doom. Doom was the first warning last year, yes, that we were doomed. And she
the spin-off of which you speak.
Well, it was supposed to be when we go multimedia, you know, the larger universe, darling, you know, what RTD wants, right? And so, of course, we weren't just giving you Doctor Who on television. We were giving you Doctor Who in different formats. And she was part of this other format that none of us looked at and bothered about it.
I didn't even know about it.
I don't know anything about this. So,
well, there you go. So she's obviously, she thinks
There we
she's part of the universe when she wasn't. So,
well, she might have been part of the universe. It might be us who aren't part of it.
well, I think we made a decision. So it was 61. It's not a number you normally represent anyway. I always find it when Doctor Who fans call it Doctor Who Day, I'm thinking, well, it's 61st, and I'm a little bit bitter and twisted at the moment. But gosh, when you take us back to this, and you just think the cheek, the temerity of this idea to get it off the ground in a scrapyard, you know, two teachers spying on somebody, maybe kidnapping a kid. I mean, wow, this was just... And then, of course, you get, I think, the best cliffhanger of all time to see a police box, what looked like another planet at the time. We obviously realized it wasn't, but, oh, wow, wouldn't you... I want the magic back.
I do not want to be a child ever again. It was horrific being a child. The only thing decent about it was Doctor Who.
I'd like to be 40 again.
Yeah.
What was so wrong with Gary Halliday?
I do. I always think of Colin Baker saying he was a uni student, stood at the bottom of his stairs. The music came on and he was stood there 25 minutes later, having been entranced by this new program.
Yeah.
And I just wish. So happy birthday, Doctor Who, if that's what we say. It seems a bit weird when it's a program, but, you know, I'm one of those fuddy-duddy northerners, you know, we don't celebrate anything up here. We don't even have lights. So
what you got.
So, do you think the thread would like us to talk about the war games in colour edited?
Nah.
No. Should we go home early?
Yeah, see you, Brendan.
Too frightening. Seeing as how what they did with the Daleks.
So here we go then. I normally set it up. It's our burning issue of the night. Where do you start when it comes to this? Maybe with the announcement, eh? So I'll just kind of set us up here. Yes, it was only yesterday we were told this announcement that Doctor Who would be in colour, the War Games. And then you started reading the press release.
No, I didn't.
And there was the trailer, of course, but you then start to realise, right. So I'll just tip those through. So here we go. The final black and white adventure returns in full colour. The War Games in colour premieres on BBC iPlayer on December the 23rd. Nice Christmas gift to Doctor Who fans on the surface. But then, of course, you realise that, well, it's not in its entirety. You know, it's not going to be as we saw in the book. It's not going to be as we see on our DVD collections. It's going to be a different version. They showed you a few snaps, so you get a taste of the colour palette they're using. And I know some Doctor Who fans, and we'll discuss this, have said the colour palette's wrong. But there's a few shots from it. There's the Regeneration that I didn't see in the War Games, as an example. You have You know, a little bit of kind of teaser stuff. But then here's some of the detail just to see what you think. So it's time to step into the excitement of the war games once again. Originally aired in '69, it marked the era of the end of the Second Doctor. We talk about the military zone, the historical periods, blah, blah, blah. So far, so good. Then it says, for the first time, these original episodes have been meticulously colorized and enhanced with updated visual effects, edited into a new 90-minute feature-length experience to appeal to today's modern audiences. Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. Right, I don't know where to start, really. I'll start at the beginning then. Why does the BBC need to break down any Doctor Who story from its original length shorter? I am also aware, as a kid, we had Planet of the Spiders omnibus, Genesis of the Daleks omnibus, and many others. Brain of Morbius, the butchered version. Remember that video? So,
Daemons.
Yeah, so I'm aware that it's done before, but I'm also aware that there's some people who watch this. Some of the modern audience are also J.K. Rowling avid readers of Harry Potter, and they know that a book has chapters. Now, if you were given a Harry Potter edited highlight in one chapter, would you still read it? I don't understand why we're infantilizing people to say they can't cope with 10 episodes. It has to be bottled down. Why? They read, don't they? Don't they read books with chapters in? I don't understand this concept. Does anyone have a understanding why we have to have highlights?
I can only assume that they think that people this day and age just don't have the attention span to watch something in 10 parts. And they just think, oh, let's just chop it up a bit, condense it all down, and it's more palatable for a younger audience. I don't think it's right, but that's what I disagree.
Two points I'd like to make straight off, and one is I would not be surprised if the full 10 coloured episodes are released on DVD or indeed Blu-ray, because the clips look perfectly good enough to be able to deal with the extra quality. And the other issue is they could broadcast it in several 90-minute chunks and people would watch. I'm sure that the main reason it's 90 minutes is simply because of the lack of space and the broadcast schedule. I mean, that is the bottom line.
So why not do one episode a day, taking out 25, 28 minutes?
That would do. That would
Michael Herbert, think about it. Do you know what? When we were younger, they had the 5 faces of Doctor Who. As you say, Michael, 1 episode a night. And you know what we managed?
How did we cope?
How did we cope without it being abridged before bed?
Yeah.
And
it does feel like the powers that be, whatever name they may go by, don't trust the audience almost. It's like it actually reminds me of in the Victorian era. They used to sort of do truncated versions of Shakespeare plays.
Bowdlerising.
Yeah, with happy ending. There's a happy ending with King Lear, I think. Possibly Hamlet, I don't know. Maybe becomes king. So it just feel a bit like that kind of, the audience can't cope with a lengthy series.
Is this just a BBC's initiative of doing it, or is it a Russell T Davies?
Actually, it's a good question, because there's a quote from him here, so I'll bring it up now. From the day I arrived, RTD, on Doctor Who, this was the plan: to colorize old stories and bring them back to life. And on Doctor Who Day itself, it's great to announce this, celebrating the show's wonderful heritage with an all-time classic. It looks so vivid and new, and for fans of black and white, the story's in its original form on BBC iPlayer, so everybody wins.
But this is the point. They're not colouring in all of the episode. They're only colouring in part of the episode.
Well, we don't know that. As I said, it might turn up on DVD. It could
might do.
On iPlayer.
Yeah,
but they're not showing it on TV, are they, though?
But if they were only colouring in part of the episode, what was the point of colouring in part of the episode when they had the opportunity of colouring in it all of the episodes?
Because it costs a lot of money. That would
all right, okay, fair enough. But also the fact when you say, well, there's it's down to production schedules. There's not enough airtime. BBC Two, if you look on the schedule, most of its output is all repeats.
Yeah.
So there is perfect opportunity to show
put it in.
10
Yep.
25-minute
It's
episodes.
BBC Three, so it's BBC Four. Yes.
Exactly.
But the prime time television slot at Christmas time is the money maker for the BBC. What is strapped for cash, gov. So
Except-
they will pull people in.
Except I have to say, and I'm somebody who's followed the BBC and I've defended the BBC in the past, but I've found that the BBC output is getting harder to defend because the amount, as Jeremy says, the amount of repeats that are starting to be shown in BBC Three and BBC Four, and actually on other,
on BBC Two. When I looked at the schedules and the repeats, every program practically was all repeat, and that's quite
They've sold all
shocking.
the studios, haven't they?
That's absolutely quite shocking. I mean, I know they've got a lot of airtime to fill, but they are just, they're just not spending the money on new programming.
So where is the money going then? Is it because they're getting less from the TV license? People aren't paying it. Is that
no? They just spent. They put too many channels on, too many radio channels and too many TV channels, and they're spreading their net too wide, and they haven't got enough.
And they haven't got enough to fill it. Well, yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
I know that one of the technical things is it is cost if you colorize one episode compared to 10. It's very expensive to do 10 episodes. So I go back to this, and this is where I think fans are onto something possibly. Why, out of all the Patrick Troughton stories that we have, I know it's not many. You've got the Dominators, the Quotons, the Seeds of Death, for example. Why, and the Tomb of the Cybermen, why have they gone for this one when they could have had a shorter story? And I think the Tomb of the Cybermen or the Crotons is an example of a 4-part story, and it would have been cheaper to colorize and not destroy.
We don't know they've destroyed it yet.
How can you, I know, but how can you, Simon, say safely that to lose 200 odd minutes of Doctor Who is going to be done safely by Benjamin Cook?
Well, there's no experience, no example of him doing it properly yet. But that
I mean, because the Daleks in colour, because obviously as we were saying about becoming more cynical, when we saw the Daleks in colour last year, I was applauding Doctor Who in colour. I wanted it. I know some people don't. I did. Yeah. So I was applauding the colorization. I thought this will bring Doctor Who to a new audience. I thought that would do it. I didn't think you had to do something extra to it. I didn't realise they were going to put a new score on it. I didn't realise they were going to actually butcher the middle section, the escape from the Dalek city, and just make it into a disco event. I didn't realise that. I didn't realize they were going to keep showing that a lot of our younger generation have Alzheimer's. And so they had to keep showing them something that had only happened 5 minutes ago in a flashback. I didn't realize that.
It was pathetic. Yeah. And I think the reason for that is they just did not have any editorial overview. If they'd had any other Doctor Who fan looking at it, that would have been stamped out. I mean, if I'd been the editor, and I have been the editor on some Doctor Who programs, I would have put my oar in and stamped up and down. And so would anybody else. Well, so did everybody else.
But maybe nobody would listen to you.
There were many people actually making it.
And this is when, I mean, I'm still using that press release from the top because our thread are onto it. They've watched the streams yesterday, which, like I said, I don't like to react, but of course, some good comments will have been made. And I've made my list here, but why did they particularly pick the most difficult story to colorize? And one conclusion is, as Farsight says here, I believe there's a regeneration scene. I totally disagree with that. It will be done as a New Who regeneration, which is just wrong. There is a horrible suspicion out there. Now, what's the panel think here? What does the thread think? Do you think you're just going to see a regeneration into Pertwee? Do you think you're going to see an open regeneration? Do you think you're going to see a regeneration into the fugitive Doctor?
I would.
No. Pertwee. I think we'll see Pertwee.
Well, we hope we will.
Yeah. So with your experience of where we are with Doctor Who, RTD and everything, I'll go along the panel and ask the thread. Everybody just tell me now, is it going to be fugitive Doctor, Pertwee, or is it going to be just left open-ended as it actually was in the war game? Stick with it. True. So what do you reckon, Claude?
I think it's going to be, because you've already seen the trailer. His face is starting to obviously glow in a similar way to New Who. It could do a fade out at that point, and then we see obviously goes to the first episode with John Pertwee where he falls out the TARDIS. I think they're going to show it. They're going to do some CGI John Pertwee of some sort, just briefly, and then it will fade out, and it'll have the end. The Doctor Who sound at the end of it or something. That's what I think.
So you're full of hope.
Yeah. That's the way I see it. I think that because they like to simplify things and they'll want to make it that scene there obviously is changing. It looks like more like a New Who Regeneration. It could just fade out at that point, but I don't know if Ross T. Davis has got anything to do with it. He'll take a silly decision and do something which is going to annoy classic Who fans, as he always does, and he won't give a damn. So that's perfect.
Turns into Mrs. Flood.
So Simon, what do you reckon? What is your educated guess going to be? What do you think our production team will do?
Well, the simple thing to do is obviously to go for Pertwee, but they want to put all the New Who stuff into canon. So we've got to find somewhere that the Fugitive Doctor comes in. This seems like a good little spot indeed, because we never saw the transition. It seems like an editorially open goal, and I would like it.
Really?
Yes, I would.
Right. Okay, then, Jeremy, in the Three Doctors, there is a bit of dialogue in our canon where surely the Time Lords say, get the third Doctor, get the second Doctor, don't they? They actually number them. They name them. Yeah?
Yeah.
So how can anybody now absolutely could change everything and say there's a fugitive Doctor there, there's a little gap there? There isn't one, because even the Time Lords in the 1970s in the 10th anniversary said so, Jeremy, didn't they?
And I don't know why they have to mess around with this in the first place. I mean, all they had to do really was just to colour in the episodes, and that would have been more appreciated.
She wasn't known as the Doctor because she didn't know she was the Doctor. So nobody else would have done. She was hiding, wasn't she?
I mean, as far as the Regeneration scene is concerned, he should really just morph into John Pertwee and leave it at that. But I think that this present team will probably want to fiddle around with it so they can tie in with the new series.
Oh, I hope not.
But this is why we reckon, therefore, they've chosen a harder task, because they're trying to do those neat bits. Now, we can't all win here, because this is... I was thinking about this. I thought, do you know what? Where do you stand on when we get the Blu-ray collections and they add a special effect, or they make the Day of the Daleks look as though there's a few more Daleks there? Are you in the camp where you think, well, it's nice to see that? Or when you see the Horror of Fan Rock, you go, it's nice to see the Rutan updated? Because it's the slippery slope. Because as soon as you allow that, anybody who does any colorization of Doctor Who thinks, well, actually, I'll just tidy that bit up. And actually, I'll add a scene with the Sid Rats in space. That wasn't in the original War Games. We'll add that. We'll have an explanation scene. And all of a sudden, you're going, hold on a minute. When is it actually being disrespectful to Malcolm Hulke and Terence Dix's script?
Adding extra scenes is, but tidying up CGI that you would love to have done better at the time. And I used to work on the CGI for the original series things, and know full well it would have been nice to do that better, wouldn't it? Sorry, we haven't got enough time. Move on.
But you see, this is a period piece of television, and I think all they should just do is just colour it in and leave it at that. Don't mess around with it, putting in silly Benny Hill music or putting in new scenes.
No.
It just doesn't come together. And I'm not entirely sure whether this will entice the younger generation to come in and watch this show. And will they watch the black and white episodes? Or did you say, the black and white episodes are boring, but this one's a bit better because it's edited into 90 minutes, and it's in colour as well.
Simon's got people. Boomer Doug, our detoxer, says, damn it, I keep agreeing with Simon. This is very annoying. Well,
I do my best.
We certainly not agree. We certainly, it's getting quite interesting and testy tonight, which is good. That's what we want. I'm trying to keep up with the thread, who, of course, are on fire as usual. On the Blu-ray season sets, I want the episodes as close to the way they were originally released as possible, says David Harding. They can put the variants on discs too, but I won't watch them. Isn't this where we stand with the colourised? Some people say you can have the colourised edited for a modern audience, but the originals are still there. That's what RTD said. But they're not just doing that, as Jeremy said.
They're changing the original form. They're
Yes.
changing the new interpretation of it.
That's right.
So we're saying, Michael, we didn't get to you, Michael. What's your educated guess on, are we going to get a fugitive Doctor? Are we going to get Pertwee? Are we going to get open-ended?
I found it a bit depressing, really. I'm not sure I really care. I probably won't watch. Well, almost certainly won't watch it, because I was quite happy with the way it was in black and white and 10 episodes with the original music, and it was written, in a particular era of the show, and they did their best to turn it, because they'd lost 10 episodes of 2 other ditched serials. It was written very quickly, and to the brief that at that point they didn't know who the new Doctor was going to be. So that's why deliberately, as I'm sure you all know, there's no regeneration, as we now call it, which nobody really talked about then anyway. There's no regeneration scene at the end anyway. He just whirls away into darkness with a kind of a lots of funny effect. So
I mean,
I was quite happy with that, the way that it was then. So I don't know why, if you got the money to splash around, then why not do the Daleks master plan or the other missing episodes? Why mess around with something which was perfectly fine?
They'll change Mavic Chen because it might be cultural appropriation or something. You know what they'll do. This is the problem. I mean,
if we'd had colour back then in the 1960s, then this story would have been in colour.
But it would have been made in a different way, I suspect. I mean, because obviously colour changes the way you make TV. And whereas I think the other thing, I'm trying to, sorry not to go on too long, but because of the sort of nitty gritty of the story, as someone said on the thread, the black and white words.
Well, we've got somebody who's going to help be Contrarian too in the thread. Doctor Who Mania, hello. I don't see what people are complaining about. Never happy about anything that's given to you. Now, it's not that Doctor Who Mania that we've just been born yesterday and suddenly we're wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, like Disney characters, like Mowgli. What we're looking at here is Daleks in colour. Now, you see, Doctor Who Mania, have you got skin in the game? I don't, but I do respect writers as an English teacher. And it's not just writers, it's the whole production team, it's the designer, it's everything. And don't you think, Doctor Who Mania, that it's dangerously disrespectful to change the spirit of, the structure of something that was made in a different era by other people who knew what they were doing then? I just think it's a bit presumptuous. It's maybe a bit arrogant to change somebody else's work.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, having worked on those shows, I would say the show never turned out to be what the writer and producer wanted anyway. There was always some limitation on their wild flights of fancy or just about anything else, pragmatically. And if that could be addressed and sorted out, they would be quite happy. But if you completely change the spirit, absolutely not.
The thing is, Simon, we don't know now. Once people have died, sadly, isn't it too late to start saying, right, we can now play with their work? Because we can't get their permission.
Well, as long as the original untouched remains, it's a matter of the estate of the family, whether or not it's let out. And that's not my choice. That should be the choice of family members to whom it might make some difference.
But I suppose we come back to when Doctor Who Mania says you're never happy. Jeremy, it was happy if you just colorized it and left it alone.
Yeah, I'd be over the moon if they just coloured in all the 10 episodes and put them on BBC Two or whatever. And I say, great, well done, wonderful job, and leave it at that. But there is a danger, of course, that the original 10 episodes could be removed from the iPlayer and this version could be the new version. And they say, well, this is what we want to promote now.
Right.
That would be very sad.
And they're going to do that with all the Doctor Who black and white episodes and mess around with them.
Yeah. Well, can I ask
a different narrative?
Can I ask you another question now? Because there's so much that the War Games in colour, edited, and there's all the discussion about editing to come. I can see Doctor Who Mania saying it's down to 90 minutes, but the middle of the story drags on, so therefore you can play around with it.
Yep.
Again, it's about respect to other people's work. It has to, Doctor Who Mania, are you agreeing that because some of our kids now apparently, I can't life, we have to butcher a J.K. Rowling Harry Potter story into one chapter just so they can cope? Is that what we're saying? However, Jeremy, we were kids when the Target Junior Robot book came out.
Yes.
Weren't we?
Well, I bought them. I bought both of the books, but as I said, we still got the original Target book, but that the junior books was obviously for a junior.
Isn't that the same? Isn't that the same argument, though?
Well,
I mean, how far do you go? But how far do you go around changing other people's work because you don't think it's good enough? I mean, there's the National Gallery going to start repainting.
Yes, but Terence Dix rewrote the book, didn't he?
So are you saying then that in, say, in 10, 15 years' time, Classic Who is going to be completely unrecognisable in whatever form exists then to how it is perceived now?
If they decide to colour in all the episodes and rejig them about a bit and add in extra scenes and whatever, that it could be their attempt to make old classic Doctor Who in line with new Who.
Yeah, I can see that.
And may I say, wasn't the Fugitive Doctor in the Rogue Scan?
I think so. I can't remember. I've only seen the episode once.
I didn't watch it.
So in other words, our friends at the BBC team
was. I think she was.
Now, I've got another question. There's a lot of questions I've got to ask, representing our viewers out there and yourselves. So the other question, and it's on the screen now, is whether it's going to be the Fugitive Doctor, Pertwee, or whatever. The regeneration itself that was never seen in the War Games is now going to be a version of seen. And again, RTD has injected his Tinkerbell regeneration dust. And now this means that the showrunner from 2005 onwards, in 2 takes, has imposed his presentation and style of regeneration on everything. Because there's no way anyone in the future can do 10th Planet without it being Tinkerbell regeneration dust. When you see Choji and John Pertwee on the floor, it'll have to be Tinkerbell dust again. And before you know it, he has absolutely, like Sutek on the TARDIS, RTD has changed how the whole of Doctor Who looks. This is not just a simple colorization, an innocent little project, a little gift for Christmas. Why do we have to see the regeneration looking like a new Who version? Because it is Tinkerbell dust.
The regeneration has already been done, hasn't it? With that company Devious, didn't they do on the DVD? Yeah. So
I mean, when we saw David Bradley as the first Doctor in Capaldi's last episode, he had the twinkling light to the same glow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's already kind of half happened in some ways.
So it's lost. You see, this is what I mean. Start tinkering with the past and we're stuffed, because now
I don't believe we're stuffed at all. No.
Well,
it may change in part, but that doesn't mean we lose absolutely everything else. I mean, history is created by the present day's view of it. Anyway, and now, for the first time ever, we have got the ability to check absolutely with DVDs and VHSs and everything. So we've got the historical, solid background facts to go back to if we wish to. And therefore, I don't mind.
I think RTT is just basically Winston Smith in 1984, where he's kind of constantly changing the past to suit the present, altering facts. Well, Eurasia has always been a war with Oceania.
Yes, perfectly valid statement. Yeah.
So you see, I am concerned about that, because I'm thinking, when does he calls them classic shows, but when do you respect that the past did not look like that in any shape or form? And God, I think it's so arrogant to say our version of regeneration will be imposed on a different era, because God help us. I don't know what your favourite regeneration is, but I would hate to see Caves of Androzani or Logopolis looking like that.
Oh no, I wouldn't want to see that.
And this is the point. But he's made it a consistent thread. So the logical conclusion is this has to be every regeneration now.
Well,
Yeah.
why stop there? Why not use AI to change some of the actors in the old series? Because you might say, well, it was fairly ethnically one-dimensional, mostly white actors. So why not go back and let's change some of the actors and make them more in line with today's values, etc., etc.
I am going to nitpick at this. Right. One of the big ones that the viewers have been talking about, and I think is the most obvious one to mention, is 90 minutes instead of a 10-part story. So you really have shortened it. Now, where do we stand on this? Because as I said in my thumbnail, you could call this butchery, you could call this vandalism, you could call this recrafting, you could call this rebranding a product.
We can't call it anything until we've seen it.
I can't imagine. I know, but we can take a minute out here and there. I understand that, but hundreds of minutes.
Indeed, yes.
Well, you have to speculate that, given how long the original 10 parts were. I mean, how long was it? About 25 minutes per episode in the original?
Yeah.
25
so you do the maths. I mean, that's a lot that we hacked out.
So
I mean, it's got to be shorter. I mean, there are 7-parters, with some of the Malcolm Hulke ones, a 7-parter, which is round about, 200 minutes. So it's even shorter than that.
But is the question here, right? Is the question here? Because I can see, and Doctor Who Mania, you were one of them who said, yeah, but there's the middle is just kind of going backwards and forwards between time zones and war zones and all the rest of it. Yeah, I know that. There were, in a way, you might call it padding. I wouldn't like to go that far, but there were episodes where they went from one to another. But wasn't that the beauty and essence of Doctor Who? It was
that
an
was the only bit I remember. I hadn't seen it until last night, and those TARDISes sprang out my memory. That matters. Absolutely, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy, isn't this the essence of Doctor Who? You can't just make it and I'm going to add it to another point, Jeremy, so that the whole thing about shortening it and you just change what Doctor Who was. If you think 2 episodes there could have been lost, that's not the point, I don't think. But the other thing is, it's the way we've been educated as New Who viewers by RTD, which is everything has to be 45 minutes long. And he's made the monster. He has made the New Who fans who in his era not accept that you can have episodic and not accept that you can have a long yarn. So surprise, surprise, he goes and looks at all the old classics and he decides they have to be turned into these little wee omnibuses.
Yeah, I mean, it's instead of bringing New Who more in line with Old Who, he's putting Old Who more in line with New Who.
Yes.
And that's basically what's happening.
Yeah, this is not the end of the world. It can change again.
It would only be the end of the world if you had a fictitious television company taking out old programs, redoing them like this, and then scrapping the old program, i.e., junking it, wiping it, and that would be a crime in itself. At the moment, the BBC are keeping the original cans of film. We hope.
I'm just mentioning Ian Levine again at this point, as if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have these things, and the conversation would be completely pointless.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I would be more happy if they just coloured in the episodes and left it at that. But I know that these people that are working behind the scenes are trying to not only project themselves but project the fact of what they do to sort of digitally remaster, alter, add in music, etc., put in new computer effects. So they say this is what we can do, and we can do it for other TV programs. But as I said, for purists, it's kind of like it's taking the mick a little bit, really.
I mean, you've got the SID right here, haven't you? Look at it. They've had it. You see, the Blu-rays have done stuff like this, so I'm just wondering, that the horse has bolted, the genie's out the bottle. We should have resisted this at the time. Doctor Who has been tinkered with. What looked like, we just tidying up one tiny scene, one embarrassment. Now they've thought it's carte blanche. We can just go for it now. I mean, Claude, where do you stand on this? I mean, you've got this lovely Sid rat here spinning through space like a metallic TARDIS, and it's a new scene. They're adding bits. Is this okay?
I think, you have to put into the perspective, which obviously people always said tonight, that the original format or the original way it was done still remains. You can always go back to the original black and white version. It's not like Star Wars, where they actually got rid of the original ones and then keep editing and adding more bits and changing it, putting CGI and stuff like that. So I think for me, it's an interesting thing to check out. I mean, I will certainly be watching this and seeing just whether how they tighten it up, because some people say the episodes were a bit too long for a 10-parter. But again, as we've already discussed, if they're trying to make Classic Who fall more in line with New Who rather than being what it was originally, and trying to respect that way it was done, but maybe just clean it up, that's what I don't like. I want it to be, recognizable as to how it was, just enhanced a bit, not mucked about and defaced in respect of New Who and Russell T Davies's strategy agendas.
You see, the story sells itself. It doesn't have to be adapted in this way.
Yeah.
And that's the strength of the classic Doctor Who episodes. You don't have to muck around with them or mess around with them. The originals will sell themselves.
Stories, yes.
But I still think that they think that for younger people coming into Doctor Who, they just don't have the attention span to watch a 10-part story.
We see, Michael, I'm fascinated. I've been teaching for 30 years, and you can imagine if I suddenly said I agree with RTD's idea that everybody's pretty limited of concentration span, then what the hell have I been doing? And you're a father. You know that this isn't true. No. This is just a dumbing down of the younger generation. They can cope. They read books, don't they?
I mean, I will say this as a dad. Both mine who are now 18 to 16, they'd never really been into Classic Who. They like New Who, and I've tried so many times to get them to watch Caves of Androzani or whatever, and they just don't click with it. And I don't know why, because they just don't. They just see it as different the way it was made. So whether the people who at the BBC are sort of getting that perspective as well, and that's why they're tinkering it. So to say, oh, it's colour. Oh, they'll like that. Oh, it's going to be more sort of background music and more quicker cut.
Yeah, it looks like he's been cut in his prime for a second.
But we watched 6 episodes over 6 weeks, so the story grabbed our attention. So I can't see what the problem is with today's generation.
I'm fascinated.
I'm not sure there is a problem, because today's generation will grow older and change. Do your kids watch any old television at all?
My kids.
Well, anybody's.
I don't have any kids. Not that I know of.
The thing is, Simon, I was talking to John Daly, one of our other panelists this morning, and he was making the point that, when we were kids, we remember being kids. I mean, have the younger generation changed that much? I understand they use different things. I'm not stupid, but their brain capacity is still there. There's still universities full of the younger generation, and they do know what they're talking about. When we were younger, we liked Laurel and Hardy on BBC Two. We liked Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers on the weekday mornings. We coped.
Absolutely, yes.
And so when I think RTD and Benjamin Cook are hopefully with good intent, thinking that the younger ones can't cope with detail and with complexity and stuff like that. Are they teachers? Are they parents? Have they got skin in the game? Because I do. And I think they've got their audience completely wrong.
Why is it they make a James Bond film for 3 hours? And, do they not think, oh, well, we can't make a James Bond film for 3 hours because the audience will get bored with it and walk out,
Jeremy, it's a good point, because movies have got longer, haven't they? I mean, I know there was a period when you had Cleopatra and Ben-Hur, those massive ones are still long.
Gone with the Wind
But we've gone back to some of them now, haven't we, really? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, so I'm very dubious about editing that amount out. I'm dubious about the Regeneration Tinkerbell dust. I'm dubious about what we're going to see, because this is editorial editorial interjections going on here rather than a beautiful custodian of what's happening.
So we assume. We haven't seen it yet.
We did see Daleks in colour, though.
Oh my!
Yes.
And justifiably angry about that.
But you see, and the other thing that I was talking to John Daly about this, and we were saying, look, if this is for the modern fans, and so basically we've just got to, just put up with it. Why aren't people pitching to us? Because we're the ones who are normally the ones who buy the merchandise. Actually, it's not the younger ones. We're the ones who have invested in Doctor Who for many, many years. Why is it it us that aren't being pitched to? I don't understand it, because the younger ones might watch this Daleks in colour, might watch War Games in colour, but will they be the ones who go and buy the material later? And the answer's normally not.
No.
Yeah.
So
But the world has changed. Do
Yeah,
they
but
buy
that's
any
not-
of those stuff?
So basically, this expensive exercise is to make younger generation watch one event on BBC 4, but the older ones who've actually been watching Doctor Who for many years, there's nothing in it for us, but they'll hope we buy the blooming DVD when it comes out.
But you say there's nothing in it for us. What I discovered after having looked at the things and thought, oh no, this is terrible, and everything about it really rankled, I watched it again. And knowing the trigger bits were coming, I could tune them out, and then I watched again, and then I could feel the qualities. And there are a lot, just as many as in the old shows. And I can really appreciate, I mean, the cinematography, I mean, the invention of the CGI, the care and the detail to it, the wonderful quality of the sound. Oh, so much to appreciate, so much more than they used to be.
Well, as JWC Review says here, and we've all can't get the Daleks in colour out of our heads. I was looking forward to it. Let's start again. I was looking forward to it. I actually didn't mind the beginning. I actually could see the change things. I was going with it.
Yep.
It was that middle period, and as JWC Review says, the change to the incidental soundtrack music really ruined it. And I actually thought that was a hell of an imposition. Surely, I'm sorry, but how far are you allowed to change things? What, just the colour? Then you can change the sound. Then we had added Dalek voices. Suddenly, this is not a classic.
There was not enough editorial overview.
I don't think anybody's arguing with the fact that, I mean, it's great that it's in colour, and two, obviously the sound and the picture's been digitally remastered. Great, that's how it should be. But the dividing, the line that's crossed is when they start adding in bits, start changing the layout and the organisation of it, etc., etc. Then it's almost like a red line crossed to a certain extent, certainly for traditional fans.
Yeah, I mean, as Simon's saying, Doctor Who Mania says, wait and see how it looks and feels before we all get carried away. I agree, Doctor Who Mania, if this was the first time.
Yeah, we've already seen it. This is the problem. We've already had that from the Daleks.
The Daleks, yeah.
What I would say is I would hope that Benjamin Cook, knowing the criticisms last year that were well intended, would actually adapt how they were doing it. But the other thing is, Simon, if you're going to edit 10 episodes and colorize them, the project was already started before the feedback on the Daleks, surely.
Oh, well, it's quite possible. As I say, I mean, I did some of the first colorizations myself, and it took a huge amount of time and effort for anything to happen. So very probably. But the number of times you go back and re-edit because things have changed is innumerable.
So, Michael Herbert, you've spent time looking at a lot of 60s TV history. You've been looking at Malcolm Hulke's, life. And how are you sitting there at the moment, knowing that you've watched the War Games and you've enjoyed it and you've seen it as a classic 10-part serial? How are you feeling when you know that the music's probably going to be changed and adapted, that they'll probably add some scenes? I mean, how far are we allowed to do this, and how far is it just a gross intrusion on Malcolm Hulke and Terry Sticks's work?
Well, it feels like you're saying to them who can't obviously answer for themselves anymore. Although I am in touch. I told Terence's widow about Elsa. I don't know if she'd been told about it before. They might have, whether they got permission from Terence's family or Malcolm Hulke's estate, because he had no children, to do this. I don't know. But from my viewpoint, well, let them get on with it, because I won't be watching. I just feel like an insult to not just the writers, but everybody else involved in produce something which I think was high quality at a very fast pace, with all the various stresses and strains and obviously compromises that arises in television production. So when something's perfectly okay, it's a bit like just sort of going the National Gallery deciding to repaint a few Rembrandts because didn't quite get it right. We can do better. Well,
yeah.
let's just accept that sometimes things aren't perfect. But I don't think that gives you a right to mess around. I mean, nobody's going to go. I don't know where would you stop? I mentioned the sort of bowdlerization of Shakespeare, but perhaps people will go back and read.
May I just raise a point here? Well, Doctor Who Mania and others are fair. Everybody's allowed their opinion, but I'll just raise RTD's opinion. I'm going to quote Russell T Davies back at himself. In a few of my saloons, in his interviews, he has said he doesn't allow any actors to change one word of his script.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not allowed. If he has spent all the midnight hours, he says, up to 2 or 3 in the morning, having an argument with himself about choosing the word yet, but, etc., then no actor is allowed to change any of his words. And he said it happened once, and that character on the TV screen just sank away because they didn't reflect what he had written. Respect his writing. Right, there's my slam dunk, folks. Come back on me on that, Doctor Who Mania, because the truth is RTD will not tolerate anybody tinkering with his work.
Well, unless it's Disney.
I just had a reply from Benjamin Cook, by the way. I sort of replied to one of his tweets. I said I was quite happy with the black and white version of the 10 episodes, which I watched in 1969 and still watch now. And he's replaced with a couple of emojis. Face with tears of joy. Don't know what that one is. Face rolling on the floor with laughter. I've no idea what that means.
Doesn't bode well, does it?
Look, I struggle because anybody, and Simon, you've been in the industry, and I don't play the person. I play the issue. I play the ball. And so Benjamin Cook, I'm sure, will have done his damnedest. He was given the role. He did his best. We can argue whether Daleks in colour worked and whether this works. The point is, I do think people are trying their best to do things. I do. However, as you said, Simon, yourself, have they been given too much editorial control when actually they should be doing more of a colorization custodian exercise? And I will, as Lee Smith has said, it's my kind of drop the mic moment. It is true. Go back to my saloons. RTD is extremely clear. Nobody tinkers with his work.
When you say his work, you're referring to the words the actors produce.
The script. Yeah, the script.
Now, that I can fully understand, because I'm also an actor, by the way.
Yeah.
And I have terrible trouble remembering my lines, so I tend to improvise. And I don't know precisely where the rest of the things are going to go. And when an actor improvises, they're following their own line of thought rather than the line of thought of the rest of the script that they haven't seen yet. So that is why he doesn't want anybody playing with it, because he has mapped the whole thing out rather than just the little bit that the actor, having seen it for a little while, sees when they come to do it on site.
It's just he did explain that there was an actor who did it, and he just said because they changed the whole momentum of how that character was supposed to speak, etc., that character's impact on the TV screen disappeared, and he said that was their problem, and he's never allowed it again. And so then you
else agree with him. I would suspect that's absolutely true, but it'll be interesting to know somebody else's opinion.
I mean, go on. Anybody want to come in on the fact that I've got a quote from RTD and he doesn't allow any tinkering, but we can tinker with Malcolm Hulke's work?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, as you say, it's okay to do it. You can't do anything with my work, but I can tinker with somebody else's work, even though a bit arrogant, isn't it?
Well,
That's
the
not-
first showing, a tinkering is, I could say, is not acceptable. But after 40, 50 years later,
Yeah,
it's a different story, I think.
that's what I think.
Well, but he's tinkering with everything. I mean, Pyramids of Mars he's tinkered with. He's tinkered with a toy maker. He's tinkering.
Yeah.
How much tinkering is
Is he
actually
trying to
there?
make Doctor Who his own thing? He's like, this is my show. It's kind of like he's like the king of the Doctor Who universe. And
Well, I call him the toy maker. I mean, you know, and that's why Michael, I came with this thumbnail. You can see tombstones, if you want to call them that, to Doctor Who. You've got the War Games, the Giggle, Wow Blue Yonder, and Star Beast there. Is this him just reappraising Doctor Who, rebranding Doctor Who for new Who people, for modern audience, or is he vandalizing not just one character, one moment, but the whole blooming lot?
Yeah, it's not an easy one. Actually, I was going to retell it to you in a second. I'm going to find it. My co-host Malcolm, he did put a very critical criticism of Russell T Davies. I'll read it out to him if I can find it, and it was quite funny. But just to go back to what you're saying, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just don't like the way that the direction has gone with Doctor Who, especially in the last year since he's come back. I still think that the first time round it was actually relatively okay. So I don't know why his sort of perspective of Doctor Who has changed so much from 2005. You know what I mean? It's so different now. I don't know.
I don't read all the pre-news, all the other bits of press, any of that. I completely ignore. So my judgment when I first see a show is based entirely on that first viewing.
Yeah. I mean, so let me just quickly read this. This is what my mate Malcolm said. He says, but this is about Russell T Davies. He says, there's literally nothing to like about the guy. The colorization of the Daleks was well done, but the edit was shite. We already had a subpar color version of the story with the film. The charm of the Charlton's Regeneration will be lost. Russell T Davies has spent 19 years destroying what Doctor Who was. Now he's back dating his destruction into the classic Who era and destroying that. I'd say he's doing it because if he kills off everybody that made classic Who, a much loved franchise, people will accept the new crap and hail it as better. I won't read any more, but he was pretty negative about that.
Yeah. Right, isn't it?
But isn't it funny? It's not like somebody. I mean, I know, Simon, you're saying you judge everything at face value and you'll give everything a go, but equally, we are Doctor Who fans who've actually watched every blooming second of Doctor Who. So we do have an educated opinion on this. And
yes, but reading other people's opinions before seeing the program is, I think, casting yourself into a position of an expectation either for or against that isn't helpful.
Well, as you know, I'm just asking questions, and I'm asking.
From a very fixed viewpoint, though, which is why you've got me on.
It's a fixed viewpoint based on the fact that I've got skin in the game. And season one, Brendan before season one, Brendan before the specials was a very different Doctor Who fan.
Right.
And
How often did you watch the specials?
Sorry?
How often did you watch the specials?
Well, Simon, this is my other question to you and other people who defend the show a bit more. I always try and judge Doctor Who and anything made via the casual viewer, because surely you're not trying to get the geeks, you're trying to get the casual viewer, the majority. And the casual viewer will give it a few minutes. They won't watch it 10 times and then say whether it gets a pass.
Yeah, this is true. And that saddens me. But I don't watch other television programs really at all. I hardly turn the television on at all anymore, which is a sadness. I mean, I used to watch it 12 hours a day as a job. But, yes, quite.
I'll go in a few minutes, but something just occurs to me. Malcolm Hulke might have been somebody who'd read a lot of Karl Marx. You might have quoted from, I think it's the 18th, Karl Marx's 18th Brumaire, Napoleon Bonaparte, where he says, history repeats itself, the first time as tragedy. the second time was comedy, and maybe that's what we've got coming to us on the 23rd of December.
Well, if you are going in a minute, Michael, since you are the biographer of Malcolm Hulke, can you give us a context to the war games for us, please? How do you think Malcolm Hulke saw this? I mean, what details have you got about this period when he was working?
Would he write it differently today?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were sort of work. The thing is, Malcolm valued craft of writing. That comes across in everything he wrote, really. And he tried to explain the craft of writing to other people, which is why he wrote a book on the writing of television. Or he tried to explain how Doctor Who was made, which is why he and Terence wrote The Making of Doctor Who. So he's very keen to explain how things work. And he indicated you too might be able to do it as well. But he very much wanted the craft of writing to be respected. And so he and Terence sat down and just produced 10 episodes very quickly of, quite captivating and intelligent and imaginative TV. So I think if you said to him, well, in 50 years' time, we're going to just hack it down to 90 minutes because you didn't do a proper job the first time around, they would have felt quite insulted, really. Which isn't to say that he held his work inviolate, because obviously when he came to the target versions of his own work, then he would change things around or improve them or add things in that weren't in the original, because he understood that novels are a different medium to TV.
Yes, he was good at that, Malcolm Hulke, wasn't he? I mean, I can refer to the Silurians when he added a scene in the book with the younger Silurian coming to the surface. He added a lot more. He added little characters here and there in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, etc. He always added a bit to round them off.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Of course,
what he called well-rounded stories.
And of course, as a Doctor Who fan, or just as a fan of anything, to get the actual original writer then adding more in the novel is fantastic. If somebody else does it, I'm never happy. And I don't know, that forget Doctor Who. I'm just not happy about that. I love the original writer telling me what was in their blooming head, or where they'd love to have taken it, given more budget, more time, whatever.
Sequels written by other writers don't work.
There seems to be an endless series of James Bond novels, isn't there? None of which, not that I like the series anyway, but right, I'm going to have to go, folks. So
thank you. And of course, we'll have you on again if you're happy to. But thank you, Michael Herbert, for giving us.
I don't know whether you cut me off or I just vanish.
I'll cut you off in a horrible, harsh way.
Have a kind of blaze of Tinkerbell kind of.
Have a good night. It's never good timing, but Michael wasn't going then. I love this photograph. I gone to the Facebook photo research group. Look at this. This is when they were doing the Romans. Look at this. I mean, and of course, the bit that you saw was obviously more to do with that. But I love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, why do we have to? It's just isn't it funny? I mean, we've just had a historian on, and when you respect history. I know historians are famous for revising history and changing their opinions on things, but they don't normally change the original source. That's what doesn't change. It's just our opinions on it change. So people might say the War Games is brilliant, and then later on people start to say, actually, it's not as good as we thought. That's called revisionism. But you don't change the original. That you don't change the history. And that's, I think, what I've got a problem with. I'm also a historian. I don't think you should change the original source.
We've got the original source. It's on your shelves. And that is a great thing. And I'm very glad it's there. That's not going to go away. No amount of editing or anything else is going to do that. We don't have DVD burning sessions.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that is fair enough for comment. I mean, obviously, as you say, you can always go back to the original. But I just think from my perspective, it's a shame that they're doing what they obviously are doing in this new format, rather than just the 10 episodes originally just
and I agree. Yes.
And Raymond Williams here, good to see you. I'm looking forward more to the new version of War Games than the new Christmas episode. Well, that's true. That's true.
I think everybody would be. Yeah, a lot of people will be anyway. Yeah.
It might work.
A little bit of knowledge about the new Christmas episode. I was speaking yesterday to a bloke who wrote the descriptive audio for it. And he said, if you go into watching it expecting it to be bad, you will hate it. But if you don't, you will love it. He wouldn't say anything else, and I wouldn't ask him.
No.
Okay.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I have to say, I think Doctor Who fans, even Jeremy, who I know has said he won't watch, but Jeremy, you'd love to be convinced that it's improved, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like saying, well, the next episode will be better. You watch it, it isn't. Well, the next episode after that will be better, and you watch it, and it isn't. And eventually, you just say, forget it. There's no point because my expectations are that it will get better, but it actually won't.
As a
Thing's
You should have to work at
As a
enjoying.
dyed-in-the-wool Doctor Who fan, I know from the past that there'll have been a story I didn't like as much, but you go with it because it's a season of 7 or so stories.
It's only one episode, one story.
Yeah. But if the second story is then also rubbish, you'll still tune in because you're a Doctor Who fan, but you start to wobble. And I've always acknowledged it. It was around the Keita time, a bit after that I wobbled a bit. And if the lads knocked on the door and said, "Do you want to play football?" I went and played football. I did. So, there was a period when Doctor Who, when Tom Baker's, Graham Williams era, when it started to get a little bit too much high on humour, I was out the door. So, the truth is, I know that you can have a bad story.
Yeah.
But it's when you have a bad season.
It's when you had the Nightmare of Eden, then the Horns of Nimon, then you were expecting Sharda, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Because so you sort of felt a bit shortchanged, and those two stories weren't very, very great, were they?
No. So I'm just going to reflect a few of our viewers here. I collect from various sources. Some, Phoebe's great day for annoying people. How much did you really cut? And I do wonder about whether, as we've said, the spirit has been changed. Now, JWC Reviews has been with us, but I've also got his tweet. Excellent news. A great story. It will certainly benefit from colorization. I agree to that. I find it. I just hope they don't mess with the soundtrack as they did with the Daleks in colour. You see, people are willing to give it a go, but we're not cancelling it or anything. The Who 87 here, 4+ hours cut down to 1.5. I'm curious as to what got hacked out, but considering the treatment to the previous colour story, I'm wondering how much is going to be repeated, and if it'll even matter when you can drown out the dialogue with music. I mean, I acknowledge that the Pyramids of Mars, I love the first 3 episodes. And if you did an omnibus and you were into the butchery game, you could lose a bit in episode 4. I acknowledge that if you want to play that game. But to lose, as they say there, this amount of minutes, I just think is a worry, because that's a lot of responsibility. And as I said earlier today, the Brain of Morbius first VHS was a butchery, wasn't it? I mean, that was harsh.
The first Brain of Morbius,
Yeah.
For the video,
Yes.
I'm just wondering what they're going to take out of the War Games. I mean, I assume that they're going to keep most of the last episode in, I would assume. But I'm curious as to what they will actually... They'll have to take out so much and still make it all run coherently and not sort of clash. It's curious. I just wonder what they will actually do.
Yeah, I feel as though... Well, look, you have got skin in the game. The Daleks in colour, they obviously thought it was boring to a modern audience to have the escape, all that jeopardy. Let's just kind of squash it all together. Now, you could, if you want to say that the Daleks had padding, when Terry Nation has, some of them going through the inside of a mountain, and that means the 5 Doctors is open season for padding. Do we need the Doctors going above, middle, below? Can't we just have them meeting at the end? It starts to, padding is a dismissive term for actually saying there's a chance for humour, a character moment, the Brigadier having a joke with a second Doctor. All those moments as Doctor Who fans we want in. And we all know as science fiction fans, the Star Trek motion picture movie tanked because it focused on style and
slow motion movies.
Yeah, and they got it back on Star Trek 2 onwards because they allowed those little touches of character moments that some people might call padding.
Yeah.
And that's what we liked in these. My struggle with a 45-minute Doctor Who story as written by RTD, Moffat or Chibnall is it's too wham bam thank you ma'am. There's not enough time for the kind of little moments where you can embellish, add a little character here and tell a story.
Yeah, it's just cutting, rushed around and here, there, and bam, 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 and that's it. That's your episode. Rather than getting to know the characters, having those moments where they're talking slowly and talking about their characterizations and their issues. I mean, yes, obviously you still get that these days, but it's just done so differently compared to classic Who.
What do you think of what Gary Finney says here? If they want a 90-minute adventure, which is what they're producing, then why not Tomb of the Cybermen? Surely a good choice. Next, they'll be doing The Edge of Destruction as a mini 15-minute adventure. You know, how short is short? I mean, you know,
a minisode.
Yeah, minisode. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
got the issue with what money's available, how clever the push is for getting the show happening. There's so many pragmatic and you need more people making editorial decisions, I think. But RTD doesn't like that because it buggers up his writing, and I understand that as well. But on his shows, no interference. On shows that exist, interfere as much as you like, because we've got the originals and we should not muck the stuff up. This is the only time in history we have got history that we can absolutely rely on and replay. So let's make the most of that.
Yeah.
So there you go. And I try and bring balance. That's why we've got our panel like we do. Matthew Kirk here. Generally, I prefer them editors as they're faster paced and made to feel more contemporary and accessible to current viewers, as long as the originals remain. So it's that kind of, well, if that exists, but we're adding this version. I've asked the questions. I won't ask them again, but I can't believe how a younger and newer audience can't deal with anything like Jeremy. We were saying 3-hour movies, they exist.
Well, supposing the edit was bad, really bad, well, all that would do would really upset the fans, and it wouldn't bring in new viewers to watch the classic series or even the new series. You know, so there's always that side of the coin of things.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel about it. I think I'd just rather them just colour it in and leave it at that. Show it over 10, you know, one episode every day over Christmas, and I think that would bring in better ratings. I think.
So is this going to be every year we're going to get a colourised?
From the sounds of what RTD is actually saying there, it sounds as though he is up for this. That I can see, and you applauded it, Simon, because I understand what on the surface what RTD is trying to say, which is it's like a gift to fans every year of a colorized black and white version, which on the tin that's fine. It's the injection of editorial changes, taking a certain character out that might have a line that they don't see as PC. It's doing all that stuff that I have a real problem with.
Well, it would be great if all the episodes were coloured in, but we don't know at this stage whether that was the case, whether it was just the only thing that was coloured in was the edited version of the story only.
From my experience of doing it, you would do as little of it as you possibly could because it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time to do
but
it well.
We have another burning issue, and so here we go. I did mention the specials.
Oh God!
And now I'm for the thread before they start kind of, you know, hitting the panic button, or as I'd say, they'd hit the kind of. I'll press the siren myself. Are you ready? Here we go. Yes, before we press that button, this is just looking at the whole thing. I'm not going to go minute by minute. And there's not that we've done that before. Everybody's done it. What I'm saying is, a year later, since we've now celebrated 61 years of Doctor Who, and these were supposed to celebrate 60 years of Doctor Who, when you look back and when you think of the 3 stories, can you see the intentions RTD actually had? Can you see where it worked, and can you see where it wasn't? The execution was problematic and okay, because when I looked back on them, and I did watch them all again in the last few days, even though I've done reviews of it and have Simon watched it a few times. The Star Beast every time seems to carry on. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And then suddenly I couldn't help it, even though Simon, and I'm saying it to you because of the argument you've made, the screeching of brakes does happen. And it's at the points that everybody knows.
Well, I don't. Where?
Well, the ones that everybody knows, the pronoun bit, the female presenting time lord bit, the and I was ready for it. So this time round, I was thinking, right, let's just look at the whole story. What was RTD trying to do? And remember, RTD's job, surely, after the Tribunal era limped to a close, was bring Doctor Who back. What was the point in bringing David Tennant and Catherine Tate back if you weren't going to blast the British public with "This is Doctor Who, we're back"? And of course, give us 3 massive stories. Great escapism with the new graphics and with the new production budget. And of course, as I said, the Star Beast, I think, looked all right. It was ticking along. The car, the street sequence when there's the fight, well done. The drone camera looking through the loft window. There was some great footage there. But then I questioned the sonic screwdriver making these force field things. Then I question, as I say, the pronoun stuff. Then I question the female presenting, the non-binary thing. And then I start to go, oh. But that's just, and while Blue Yonder to me, and I'll say it very quickly. So Star Beast was just to win Doctor Who fans back, apparently, and the British public. While Blue Yonder was a wild blue chasm with no plot. And so all it was set up for, it seemed to me, was for the salt at the end to then introduce the Toymaker. And the Toymaker was there to do the Bi-Generation and to introduce fantasy to do season 1. And you can see how he set up the fixtures. And I think I'll allow RTD, this was his great idea. And of course, we know what's happened next. I don't know why we needed to do fantasy. I don't know why we needed... I actually don't know why we brought David Tennant back. Because when we
just to get the viewers, that's what it was.
Get the ratings.
Yeah, just get the ratings.
But the problem was the Catherine Tate element. I love the Donna Noble character, but the Catherine Tate element caused the problem because of what happened to her denouement. That her ending was terrible. So suddenly he had to craft this nonsense together about an LGBT character and non-binary and I'm a female. And all of a sudden we're in a mess. But then while Blue Yonder to me, and I'm just throwing stuff in the air for everybody to chew on, that the doctor's character says, Isaac Newton was hot. Is that who I am now? He says at another point that Donna's lovely. Is that the type of doctor I am now? And all of a sudden, we're making a point that the doctor now seems to have lust, seems to be highly emotionally charged. And that seems to be the Wild Blue Yonder. And then the Giggle was the best of the 3, I feel. And the best 2 scenes in it were the puppets about to attack Donna Noble. I thought that was classic Doctor Who. And when Mr. Chatterjee was turned into a puppet, which was absolutely macabre, that was good Doctor Who. But then we had the rest. Wait, chew on the cud, please, lads.
Well, I think I'm going to be a bit controversial, but I like the Blue Yonder.
I didn't mind it either, actually. I thought it was all right.
I thought it was more of
beautiful acting throughout.
I thought Blue Yonder was more of a Doctor Who-ish story than the other 2 were. But there were 2 references that sort of sunk me on it. So it didn't get a full 8 out of 10, even a 7 out of 10.
Which were those references?
Well, those are the references. Well, as when the doctor said.
Well, the thing about that is a big philosophical question about what is reality itself, what is the universe itself, and I've put a great deal of thought into this one. I think it's called panpsychism, but I didn't check. It seems to me, though, that all of reality is created by thought itself. And if we come out of the particular world in which we exist at the moment into another where the overall feeling of thought doesn't generate to the laws of physics, we get the magic. We get the magic, as in the toy maker area of disruption. And this is deep philosophy. I can and have gone on for a very long time about this. But I think the discovery of the actual nature of existence itself seems to hinge on aspects of life and consciousness and thought. So it's a different world, and a different world in which you can change the past. And like Mavity pops up all of a sudden, like Isaac Newton being a different color, which I didn't notice, but everybody seems to say it was. Yeah.
Well, a lot did.
We've been, Simon, we've been educated now. I was colorblind in the 90s. I was well brought up. The society was well balanced. And as you know, because of what's been going on the last few years, I've been educated. And so I now notice everything. And so they've educated me well to spot things I didn't ever spot before. And unfortunately, that's the ruination of TV now and adverts and everything, because I almost keep a ratio of what I'm seeing now.
Yeah.
And yet you complain about the past being tinkered with because those issues have to be readdressed or pointed out. Because every other television program does not redress that balance. And Doctor Who is one of the few that does, and does it in an intelligent and delicate way that does actually fit in the plot. And I'm most impressed by that, and congratulate everybody involved.
What? Give me an example of where you think they've intelligently used, just an element of a current issue.
The points you made in the Giggle, the binary non-binary bit, that is their world. It's those few people who don't normally get any airing at all, and everybody else has got to be absolutely standard, stereotypes. But then if you introduce a different worldview, you get shouted at. And I think this is just a different one. Now, a woke agenda is flashed up there.
Yeah,
that is taking it too far. That is where you don't actually understand what the hell you're talking about, but just wildly follow it. It's like Victorian politeness, which is extremely impolite and rude. I think my thread is a bit confused, but you see, what we're doing now is presenting the world in a different way from any other television program, and it was hard for me to accept that.
Let's have a look. I mean, this dialogue makes no sense to me as somebody who's just been taught science. I also don't understand why it's necessary to say that whether you're going to have male and female Time Lords, and I'm not going there now, but the dialogue was, we're binary, we're male and we're female. Okay, I get that. The Doctor's now been a female too, but she's not. So the Rose Noble character wasn't female or male. She was neither and more. So there was actually an editorial thing going on that actually trans characters are more than anybody else on the planet.
No, that's not it.
Well, what's that dialogue saying?
It's a bell curve. And you can pick somebody who's at one point is clearly one, and somebody who's at another point is clearly something else. And then other people on the extremes and in the middle.
But as an English teacher, I'm taking the dialogue as written by this masterclass RTD who sweats over every word. Claude,
yes.
When you see that dialogue,
I see the same as you, because she says it's actually written there, and neither, I'm more and more. It's kind of like
that's
almost
her
saying that
opinion, isn't it? That's her getting her own back on the nasty boys.
Well, no, but I think that's not. I think that's them sort of throwing it back at us about
because
yes, absolutely.
I don't like that. I don't want to see that.
But you see,
what's something else?
The scene hadn't finished though, because it then said, we know everything, thanks, the women, the female presenting Time Lords, and you know nothing.
Have you never come across people saying that sort of thing?
Well,
I thought that was basically funny. That wasn't a real thing. That was sarcasm with a degree of reality attached.
This is what if a male said it would be called sexism. Yeah.
Yes, quite. And my point is, this is the other lot getting their own back.
But that's not. I know. But this is when I'm sorry, but I challenge these things as an English teacher, saying, "Hold on a minute. Just because there were some runs in the past, you can't throw those runs. What do they say? 2 runs don't make a right.
Yeah.
You can't say sexism in the past was terrible, so we can now be sexist to you lot. No,
I agree. But in order to recognize those problems in the past, if you have no experience of them in the present, you can't see the invalidity of it. But you then, when you can see both sides of the argument, you can make a balanced opinion rather than just go with the flow.
This was called the resolution to a narrative. And in the resolution, we had the hero in the end was really the Rose Noble character, because the Donna Noble, Dr. Donna, her brain would have blown up and melted because of all that. Because she somehow had a son, that kind of was a kind of, a siphon. And so the world was saved because we had a trans character. And this trans character's perception is, I'm more than all you lot. And then on top of that, they both stand side by side and talk to a male character. And remember, the Doctor has been male quite a lot of the period. And he's told he doesn't understand, he doesn't get it. Why was that necessary in a sci-fi resolution?
As I said, to balance the overall effect of every other television program and every other piece of art of widely noticed television on the internet, and I saw it as that. I saw these 2 characters sod it, we've had enough, I'm fighting back. And
but science fiction's not the program to do it, because Doctor Who's been pretty good on this. I mean, Jeremy, can we think of examples where Doctor Who's been pretty pioneering? I mean,
yes.
I started the show with Verity Lambert as an example.
Indeed.
Barbara was hardly a shrinking violet. She was a damn good companion. Indeed. Susan was an interesting companion who sadly descended through the writing into somebody where she thought she better leave. But Jeremy, can you think of examples where, oh my God, why did we need to do this? I thought the episode was okay, and then this stuff happens.
I mean, the show has always been pioneering and always surprising. But the problem with a lot of this stuff we've just been talking about, it's bogging down the program. It's bogging down the episodes moving forward as a science fiction show. It's not a space opera. A soap opera. I mean,
30 seconds in the entire show.
It's bringing it into sort of the territory of EastEnders, and a kind of a lifestyle choice show.
Which are the ones that have to be counted? Yes.
So
yeah, I mean, I can understand them bringing in the element of LGBT. I understand that, and that's fine. But to keep banging on about it in every single episode, or to have a reference point of that in every single episode, it drags it away.
It's like clutter, isn't it? It sort of clutters the episodes up.
This program was inclusive for everyone. It didn't matter whether they were non-binary, LGBT, straight, whatever. This program was always inclusive. It never.
RTD knows.
Jeremy, let's
education, and he's the one doing the re-education. I understand
RTD's not a teacher,
quite
though.
Like it though. I must say I don't quite like it, but I can understand it and accept it, and wait until things change and move on, and then we get somebody else to do it.
I know, but what he's doing is he's bogging down Doctor Who stories and seasons into. They're so contemporary in some ways that they're going to be unwatchable in the future. They'd have to be edited or changed if we're on this silly censor path. I mean, Heather here, female, it was offensive. I checked in with people who were non-binary, and they didn't seem to like that part either. It was bad representation of non-binary and trans people, according to non-binary and trans people. And
I'm not one of those, so I can't make an opinion
Yeah,
there. But I can say that they were voicing their opinions as characters.
but you see, and this is what I mean. Just tell me a good story, but the dialogue is the dialogue. This nice to meet you, skinny man. By the way, anybody over 35 shouldn't be wearing stuff that you're wearing.
True.
Yeah, so it's a nice joke about that, but basically you can't fat shame, but you can thin shame.
No, she wasn't doing that. She was saying that your clothes are the wrong type for your clothes. I mean,
know, but
revolting his waistcoat button is.
This is RTD, who sometimes likes to say he can write humour, but his humour.
Oh, he can't write humour. It's not funny. It just comes across as daft.
I think it's dangerous now because he's now educated me to check every comma.
Yeah, you're now overly sensitized to it.
Yeah, he's taught me well.
You're like his Padawan, aren't you? He's
Yes.
Like
and he'll feel my force.
Who misses? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had the dead shit, the dead naming thing. So remember, this is all in one episode.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then, of course, he said he loves Donna, which the Doctor says he loves a companion. I mean, how many companions has he had? Oh, do I say things like that now? And then, of course, we had him.
Rose, which was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then, of course, he said, was it me or was Isaac Newton hot? Is this me now? And but then, is this a joke? That you have a female companion who actually has now been in his head, because of course she was the Dr. Donna, saying it was never far from the surface, mate. So that is actually surely not just a poisonous little humorous line or whatever.
That's changing the perspective of the Doctor.
Yeah, every Doctor was queer as they say now.
Well, to be honest,
it wasn't even the sexuality. I've always said this. The Doctor, for me, has always been an asexual character, and this Russell T Davies has always made, even since David Tennant, even with Christopher Eccleston, him finding feelings for companions like he did with Rose, and he shouldn't be doing that. It should be a companion, a colleague, someone to have an adventure with, and he keeps doing this. And I don't like that.
They would get rid of
that's the biggest problem I have in New Who is this constant issue of the Doctor getting romantic. I mean, look at Rogue. I mean, how many times we talked about Rogue? Which it's an episode I'm never going to watch again because it was the most uncharacteristic episode of Doctor Who for the Doctor himself to ever be in 60 years. It was just, I just couldn't believe what they did.
Isn't that the point? That
Simon, what I'm doing when I looked at the 3 episodes, these specials celebrating, let's be honest, mostly a male Doctor. What you had is the female presenting stuff, all the stuff I've shown you. Then the Doctor's suddenly different. Then you also had all this that he's more emotionally damaged. Oh, he needs rehab. And suddenly, if this is a celebration of 60 years of Doctor Who, he did.
I don't think it was, frankly.
Well, and there's my point. What was RTD wanting to do, do you think? To be fair, everybody, in these 3 specials, because I thought he would have been wanting to bring back the casual viewers.
He was trying to ignite interest by getting David Tennant back, but the stories he wrote weren't very well written, I think.
Exactly.
I think that's the problem.
Exactly.
I agree with Ezra Goldstein.
That the Doctor is an alien. He doesn't behave in any... Yeah, and it would be so much blooming easier than all this kind of man-hugging and all the rest of it going on. But by the way, can I just say, would you buy into this? Okay, it's happened. Whether we like it or not, the specials have happened. Season 1's happened. Rogue's happened a lot. Right, we are where we are. But if RTD's master plan was... he will resolve all this with David Tennant coming back and the bi-generation is kind of sealed at the end of the Shooty era. And so the fantasy era ends and the Sledgehammer TARDIS ends. And this was just kind of going down into E-space. He's kind of developed a couple of seasons where we go somewhere different because, let's face it, when you've run out of ideas, that's all that's left. So he's gone and done that. Would you forgive him then? If it was part of a master plan and then we're back to normal Doctor Who.
He's got to get rid of Mavity somehow.
Yeah.
and I think he will address the non-bright white Isaac Newton, because that was pointed out very obviously. All right, I didn't notice it at the time, but clearly it was. That is going to be an issue. Remember, the toy master maker, I always get that wrong, I have done for 60 years, he said he made a jigsaw of your history.
Yes.
Now, that can be undone, presumably, when his mega master fella comes back. I don't think it is the master, because he's still in that tooth. But, the one he said, my minions are coming. I said, no, my legions are coming.
Yes.
Who they are, when they are defeated, who knows what would happen. I think Tecteun isn't gone anyway.
I mean, Jeremy, you're not watching it. You're hoping it'll come back. If you heard a version of what I've just said, would you be able to come back?
I think it all boils down to the fact if the stories were very well written and there was a really good leading actor playing the role, then I would tune in. And if people were saying it's fantastic, you've got to watch it, I say, all right, I will.
What if they said you really have to work at it before you can see the qualities?
Well, then that would put a big doubt in my mind. And if of course there were obviously podcasts and live streams saying, "Ooh, we've watched it, and we're going to be very critical about it. It wasn't very good, etc., etc." And I would listen intently about that, and then make up my own mind as whether I want to watch it or not. But from what I've heard so far, I tuned out on The Devil's Score. That was it. I'd had enough. Particularly going through the Jodie Whittaker era, which I did watch eventually, but some months afterwards. And I thought, this is it. This is just absolute drivel. I can't say anything more than that.
No,
really.
it's fair enough.
It's not Doctor Who as I knew it from the last version of Peter when Peter Capaldi was doing it, and by that time it was going slightly off the boil then.
Now, Claude, where would you stand if this was a neat science fiction arc?
I would certainly be interested if they did have the arc where the bi-generation was sorted out and the 14th Doctor came back and re-merged with the 15th to make the 16th. I think that would be good. But I also, with Russell T Davies, I'm very, very on the fence about what he can do, what he can create. I'd like the show to get a bit less fantasy. I don't want any musical gremlins or anything like that. I just want science fiction stories with a doctor, a companion, exploring space and time. And that's not what I'm getting now. I'm just getting something which is hardly recognizable.
I don't think Russell T Davies has got too long to tie all this up, because by season 3, if season 3 does get the money to be financed, I'm not sure about season 4. I don't think season 4.
I think he practically committed suicide with the twist at the end.
Yeah. So do you all think it's going to be gone in the next 2 or 3 years, the way it's going?
I would be very surprised if they produce season 3, and if they do, the fans consider themselves very lucky. And if they get season 4, they can consider them extremely lucky if season 4 gets financed.
Well, can I just show you all something that the writers' room? If you go on the BBC writers' room, you can see all the scripts from season 1. And something you just said, Simon, and actually links to your point. We're trying to work out what RTD is trying to do. You dropped out at Devil's Cards, Jeremy. Look at this script here. Now, this was how the season was going to end with Sutek, right? And this was edited out, so you can see what he was trying to do here. And you get the Doctor. The Sutek is the dog on the rope in the time vortex. Remember that bit?
Yeah.
You saw all of Time and Space with me, Sutek. So I thought, what if you see it again? Yeah, remember that. Because if there's one thing I've learned, there was always a twist at the end, and the music bursts into the episode 2 song. There's always a twist at the end, but this time it's huge, rocking out. The TARDIS tilts, the Doctor in the doorway holding on, and Sutek interacts with the surface of the vortex, just as the TARDIS does in the opening titles, like a surfer riding a wave, the vortex ripping through. As the music's playing, there's always a twist at the end. So, are you glad that was cut? But it also it reveals what RTD was hoping to do.
Well, I haven't absorbed what the hell that means. The whole thing seems
He was going to have a song,
meaningless, frankly.
a song at the end. You're killing a god, and Sotek wasn't a god actually, but there you go. He's made him a god.
Yes, he was an alien. Any alien that's big enough, when observed by people who don't understand it, would be a god. Rephrasing Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah,
but you see, this is your key moment. This is called the climax of a series, and we've seen when he's done it well. I'm trying to be lenient.
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah. But when he's actually thought, oh, this is a riveting end to the season. I'll try not to mention reset buttons and all the rest of it, but we'd have a song that a god.
Oh, stuff that.
This Sutek, the person that the Doctor looked at and stared and thought, oh my god, and he was bricking it. Not like a hero to me. And then all of a sudden at the end, when he's got him on a leash and he's killing him because you deserve it, Sutek, we get a nice song. That was the plan.
I don't know how to respond to that, quite frankly.
No, quite. It might have been handled brilliantly. On the other hand, he certainly didn't handle brilliantly what we actually got.
No.
So there's the evidence, everybody. I am doing as much research as I can, and there's more. But if you just look at that, the thought that a Doctor Who series, when it gets, I know we can have fun. Tom Baker and everybody, Troughton, they've all had nice little lines of fun and humour. But when it gets serious, can you imagine? Since we mentioned the War Games, that after 10 episodes and all the jeopardy, and we're going to put a death sentence on you, Doctor, and exile you to Earth, and you have to change your face and all the rest of it, and suddenly there's a song, and RTD, are you real?
They could have the Benny Hill music on, couldn't they? When he's spiraling.
Yeah.
Or David Bowie in Changes.
Or you can have that stripper music, because let's face it, the way RTD did the Bi-Generation, where Shooty ended up in his undies, Patrick Troughton's Regeneration, he has to strip into all these different characters. So you could have had the stripper music.
Yeah, could have been interesting.
What do you think about the dance sequence in Toy Master?
I was all right, because I've been trained by RTD that every year you get some pop music.
Yeah,
which I absolutely hate, because it'll age the program horrifically.
Yeah, it does. You had Toxic with Britney Spears in only the second episode. We've had a fair bit of pop music. We had Kylie Minogue, remember? Can't You Get You Out of My Head in Rogue?
We had the Beatles in Evil of the Daleks.
Yes.
Yeah, but they were 50, 60 years old.
And wasn't that edited out in the DVD?
And the audio CD, yes. I presume it would have been audited out.
We had Toxic when I think it's like episode 2 or 3 of when it came back. So we have had quite a lot of
Yes, and so people aren't buying this, but I'm sorry, folks. I mean, I should have given you an alert, but you go onto the BBC writers' room. I mean, it's good and transparent that they do this. You get all the different versions, and you get the edited, and you can see what the plans were. Now, so RTD coming back. I thought the intention was to get the casual viewer. I don't think the casual viewer of Doctor Who thought Doctor Who was about this. I thought they thought it was scare the kids for 25 minutes, babysitting done. And now suddenly it's kind of a little bit of strange messaging and song and dance routines. I mean, poor Roy Castle must be turning in his grave. He could have been in Doctor Who now, and he could have been big time.
He would have been brilliant, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Bonnie Langford did.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Bonnie Langford, yeah.
So, I don't know. There you go. A bit of good news there for you.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
Insight into our great RTD, the great showrunner. So,
he can be great. He can also run away from time to time, please.
Run away now, please.
Well,
so, but look, the Bi-Generation, the sledgehammer and all the rest of it, do you think this is part of just a little arc?
Yes, because of the breakdown in the laws of physics, which the toy maker and his expected peoples are heralding, and I fear what's going to go on there because, as Donna said, there's no logic to this. There's no way of knowing what comes next. And that ruins a plot. It ruins everything. All you've got left is a sudden scare. I'm not interested.
I need another button. Cynical alert. My cynical alert is this: a writer who's writing at speed. I'll say it that rather than lazy.
Mm-hmm.
A writer who's writing at speed, lots of episodes, might like the conceit of doing fantasy because there's no rules. And if you have to stick to rules like Doctor Who canon and how things normally work, it's a bit hard.
Yes.
So what he's done is he's invented fantasy so he can do what the hell he wants. Davros, as people said, Lionel Blair could play Davros now because he's got legs. Everything's, I mean, I do worry because he has, when he jokes, you know he means it. He wants to do a musical episode. He wants to do an episode where he said there's no dialogue and it's just music. Why? He wants to do Song and Dance. I mean, Doctor Who is Jeopardy, scaring the kids. And
I don't know. Make another television program and not stick the titles Doctor Who on it. People might watch, but they won't watch. Well, he's using the title Doctor Who to sell stuff that he wants to do.
Yeah.
For himself rather than the actual franchise.
And as Paul Richards, and he stuck with us all night, thank you. But I don't think RTD will fix all the plot holes. Think of that. And I do remember, I really hated what he did to the hero then in The Sound of the Drums and The Last of the Time Lords. When he made the Doctor Who a golem, it was. Really,
oh, yeah.
It destroyed your hero. I don't want to see somebody who was William Hartnell, Troughton, and all the way through ended up in a little bird cage.
That was odd. That was strange, that story.
It was strange, but it was ruined for me by the bloody music.
Well, and JWC Reviews did say that in the thread. He was actually saying that. And as Peter Harrington says, I'm surprised they didn't play I'm Too Sexy in Rogue. I mean,
I was absolutely furious in Sound of the Drums. I don't know. I'm seriously very, very deeply upset.
Yes, and Space Jesus, Doctor Who is not. And that's the problem. So when we look at the specials and when we look at the war games and when we think of what's happening at Christmas, Jeremy, you're not tuning in, are you?
Nope. I don't want them to get. I don't want them to get my ratings.
Michael, you are tuning in.
Yeah, I've still got to watch it. I'm sorry. I'm just not excited about what's coming up. I will be watching it. Yeah.
And Simon,
I shall be watching it. I shall watch probably several times in the first week.
It'll bump up the ratings too about.
Well, it might, yes.
5 million.
Sometimes I watch the show again, as I did during.
Oh, they love you.
Oh dear me, Mr. Actor with the attack eyebrows. Please forgive me. Thank you very much. I watched his again because they were so damn good. I just loved them. And it was just so much extra stuff in it. Rewatching the ones I don't like on first time, I spot lots of extra little bits. Here's a question for you. Who played William Mott in The Giggle?
Well, Bernard Cribbins.
Did he, though? Wasn't he dead?
No, they filmed some scenes. He passed away. There were some shots, like double shots of like behind him.
Look closely and see his face.
We do see his face. Well,
Wild Blue Yonder.
Oh no, not the gig. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
At the end of Wild Blue Yonder. So look.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's marvelous. Yes.
We've blasted the internet with all this and YouTube, and look out for my saloons. Look out for. Gosh, if I've got any more energy to do any more, but at the moment, thank you, fellas, for coming on, and I've really appreciated it. And thanks to the thread. And I think it's time for us to say, "Oh my God, is it time to go?" Yes, it is. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.